For many thousands of years, humans were living off instinct, trying to survive in relatively small groups amongst all the other wild animals. But with larger groups of people eventually starting to settle down, it brought more safety and free time not having to be on the move all year round. And that gave people the mental space to start thinking and pondering more. So with more time to ponder, more people interacting, and no knowledge of why weather and other natural events actually occur, you start trying to problem solve and come up with possible reasons. Everything you experience in nature has a cause and effect. So maybe you start thinking that there's some unseen entities causing these things to happen, assigning names to these imagined entities, the kind of idea that thousands of years later develops into the famously known mythology of Greek gods, for example, like Zeus being the god of the sky, creating thunder and throwing lightning bolts when he was angry, and Poseidon being the god of the sea, manipulating the weather, water and ocean activity. As the seed of those ideas was likely thousands of years before, when humans were trying to reason with why nature acted in certain ways, it feels like a primitive scientific line of thinking by trying to figure out what was causing things well out of your control to happen. Each named entity representing a phenomenon was like a theory, so ironically religion may have started as primitive humans trying to figure out events in nature and assigning names to an imagined entity causing those events to happen. It was ultimately the seeds of those original ideas is what I think was the original invention of a belief in gods. The Egyptians, Greeks and Romans were thousands of years later, and they had many gods, with each god representing something that we didn't have a real explanation for. So the labelling of an unexplainable event with a named entity or being went on for thousands of years. Then monotheism, the belief in just one god who created everything, first started appearing around the 6th century BC with Zoroastrianism in Iran. In fact, there were a few monotheist religions that started throughout the 6th century BCE, which I think is interesting timing, as over the next couple of centuries, Greek philosophers conducted numerous experiments figuring out the shape and the size of the Earth pretty accurately, even by today's measurements. So a lot of questioning and trying to understand reality was happening during the first millennia BCE, leading philosophers to discover that there is a much larger universe outside of the Earth than was previously thought. I applaud the philosophers of the first millennia BCE. They were some of the first true documented scientists, and as we now know, it would still be thousands of years later until we would develop scientific knowledge, techniques and tools to eventually figure out what causes different natural events to actually occur.